Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on today. We are going to have some amazing conversations around money. And, for the American Influencer Council, for the AIC, democratizing capital access and providing financial wellness resources to career creators is a priority. So this is something we've been wanting to put on and we've been planning for a while. By the way, I'm Milan Singh, and I serve on the board of directors of the AIC as an advisor on creator financial planning. We're kicking off the inaugural AIC Achieving Career Creator Wealth Virtual Summit today. Thank you again so much for being part of this program. And we have a bunch of amazing people. We have an expert group of financial thought leaders, including Breyanna Nava, Nick Meyer, Andrew Lokenauth, and a special guest, Dr. Annamaria Lusardi, the founder and academic director of George Washington University School of Business Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center. So we're going to have some interesting conversations around money. And as you guys all know, money impacts basically every part of our lives, right? So being financially capable influences your quality of life. And this summit is going to be dedicated to helping career creators feel confident in their financial future, in managing their finances, right? So the summit will be broken down into a panel starting with Dr. Lusardi, and then we'll have 3 fireside chats. So get ready for some thought-provoking conversations. So welcome, Dr. Lusardi. We are all excited for you to join us to discuss personal finance knowledge for everybody. I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Milan. My name is Anna Lusardi. I was born and raised in Italy. This is where my accent comes from. And I live in Washington, D.C. I am an academic at the George Washington University, and I'm also the founder and academic director of the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, or GFLEC. We have a long name because we have a long job to do. You mentioned democratizing access to capital. We would like to democratize access to financial knowledge and financial literacy because we think it is critically important to grow and build wealth.
Yeah, that makes sense. And your research shows all that, right? Which we'll get into. So, Dr. Lusardi, you created the big 3 financial literacy questions and the TIAA Institute-GFLEC Personal Finance Index, which is in short PFIN Index, and that describes what we know and what we do not know about personal finance. So tell us more about them and your findings through that.
So I've spent more than half of my career measuring and looking at financial literacy. And what we mean by financial literacy, by the way, is just the knowledge of the basic concepts at the basis of most financial decisions. So, we are not looking at people being expert, but that basic knowledge. And what we found, I think, by doing all of this measurement, the big 3 financial literacy questions or the PFIN index shows that people have a very, very low level of financial literacy. So while we are facing today many important financial decisions and consequential, we basically make those decisions with very little financial knowledge. And let me provide some data and some figures. So for example, when we look at the PFIN index, where we ask as many as 28 questions, we found that only half of the question, we can answer only half of those questions. And so this is not a passing grade when it comes to financial literacy. And then when we look at the topics that we measure, we find, unfortunately, that the knowledge is particularly low in the topics that are most important. For example, risk and risk management. As you can see here, if we go from 50% of the questions answered to only 36%. And also what we found is that financial literacy is particularly low among some groups which are already vulnerable. For example, African American and Hispanic, for example, women. We operate, in other words, with a very low level of financial literacy. And there are 2 groups we are particularly passionate about at GFLEC, which are the young and women. And when we look at the young, for example, Gen Z, they can answer only 42% of the questions, and women only 45% of the questions. And this is, of course, important because financial literacy is linked to a variety of behaviors that are all linked to financial well-being.
Yeah, that is interesting research. I mean, just the first aspect of not only getting 50% of the questions right. I mean, in school, that is considered a F grade, which is considered not knowing the material well enough, right? So this data is just astounding to see. And I guess it also shows in other data as well, because I know a lot of people in the US are living paycheck to paycheck. I think during COVID, the statistic was 64% or something, but so this data kind of does match up and align with some of the other data I've seen, which is very interesting to see. So we have some more questions for you, and all the speakers will be asking a question. So I think Nick can start us off with a question, and then we'll go from there.
100%. Yeah, you already went through basically partially why it's important to be financially literate and how low, like we don't have a passing grade on financial literacy as a country today. But can you put it more into perspective as to why the individual creators in this call, like why it's so important for them to try to improve their financial literacy?
Absolutely. So first of all, what we see in the data, and it was shown also in the figure, and perhaps we can put them up again. Unfortunately, financial literacy is not improving over time, right? And we have gone through so many ups and downs in the economy, but we are not just learning by watching the economy around us. So we have to be really proactive in making sure that we acquire that financial knowledge. And that's why, I recommend everybody to invest in financial literacy, invest in financial knowledge. Maybe even event like this today can be important. Access resources online. We provide resources on our webpage so that people can improve their financial knowledge. As we have said, this is not a passing grade when it comes to financial literacy, but it is very important. So in one of the slides, we show, for example, that financial literacy is linked to a variety of behaviors that are very much connected to financial well-being. So, for example, those who have low financial literacy are a lot less likely to be able to cope with an unexpected expense. They are a lot more likely to be debt constrained. They are a lot more likely to spend a lot of hours per week, 10 hours per week, actually dealing with personal finance issues. And they are a lot more likely to be unable to make ends meet. So, financial literacy, as I mentioned, is a key to open the door to financial opportunities and to do better in your financial behavior.
Totally agree.
That was a lot of great knowledge. I guess to dive further into that, what do you think are some ways or things that we can do or anyone can to increase their personal finance knowledge?
I think we, more than ever, need to be, all of us, proactive and spend time in improving our financial literacy, educate ourselves on these topics, because we all make financial decisions. And, we start our life actually in debt today if we have gone to college and we have taken on student loans. And we are all making so many financial decisions every day. So I think that investment in financial literacy is very important. And I think, we can also ask it, I think, in our community. For example, be proactive and ask it in our school. We want the next generation to be financially literate. Ask it in the workplace, or provide resources and opportunity to increase your financial knowledge. If you are, in a sense, self-employed, really spend time in building that financial acumen, because it really does have a good rate of return. Is one of the good investments we can all make.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like there's just this taboo around talking about money, which is why society is not, like the data shows that most people are not as educated, because it's not so common for a kid to ask their parents, oh, how much was our house? Or what is the mortgage payment, right? Or how much is the car payment? What is the interest rate? And whenever you ask somebody, oh, how much money do you make? Also, there's taboo around that type of stuff, even though if we were all to be a lot more open about that stuff, I think we would all be in a much better place. So I think just in general, we all have a lot to just work on as a society, and then individually as well, like investing in ourselves, because like you said, the best return is going to be from investing in our knowledge.
It's very much so. And, the data speaks very strongly about that. So, this is not what you have said is very much backed by research and data. And I have to say, I have interviewed very often very famous people in finance, and there is always in their experience, for example, a discussion with their parents. So, many of the people who are famous in finance today have started that socialization early on and often in their family. And there has always been some events that they could link to their youth. To, for example, they're growing up and be able to be comfortable about finance. So I also think it's critically important that, we talk more about money, and, we try to take down that taboo, and we try to take down all of these views that we have about money, because we need to talk about it, and because it is important to, build our future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Brianna, did you have, I think the next question was yours.
Yeah, could you share with us some of the most critical suggestions from the personal finance course you teach at George Washington University?
Yes, thank you. I have been teaching personal finance here at GW since 2013. So started this course as soon as I got to GW, and this course over time has evolved and included more and more students. And I would like to provide what I call the 7 steps to financial success. So these are simple steps that we can all take to improve our financial success. And the first step is what I think we have all agreed upon and mentioned, which is take care of your finances, meaning spend a little time each week to take care of your finances. In the same way you exercise and you go to the gym, you don't have to spend a lot of time, but take 15, 30 minutes a week to look at your, for example, budget, to do a budget, to kind of take care of your financial situation. The second step is build a buffer stock of saving, have a rainy day fund. Unexpected expenses always happen. There are always accidents. So be prepared for it. Put something aside. The third step is take care and improve, try to have the best credit score you can. The credit score is your financial ID. And there are simple steps you can take to improve your credit score. Pay your bills and your credit card on time. Don't max out your credit cards. Try to be financially active as soon as possible, because history matters. So, and this is important, and it will save you so much on interest payments. The fourth step, I am fourth, right, is manage your debt wisely. We start our economic life in debt, and there are so many opportunities to borrow, many more opportunities to borrow than to save. But often the debt can charge high interest rate, in particular if you don't have a good credit score. So, be wise about the debt, and that wisdom will also help improve your credit score, and will also help you not end up being debt constrained or carrying too much debt. The fifth suggestions is learn how to invest. It's critically important, if you want to grow your wealth, to be able to invest in all the opportunities that the markets offer to you. For example, to invest in stocks or invest in high return assets. But to do so, you have to, of course, be knowledgeable about the relationship between risk and return, but how to diversify risk, and also to pay attention to the cost and fees of investing. The sixth step is to plan for your future, and plan for it as early as possible. The future doesn't take care of itself. You have to build your future. And the sooner you do, the better it is and the easier it will be. And the seventh step is take advantage of the opportunity offered by the employer, if you are an employee, or by the government. There are, if your employer offers a 401k and a match, go for it. It will help you save. But also there are tax advantage assets. For example, IRA, traditional IRA, Roth IRAs. If you are self-employed, take advantage of these tax favor assets. This is a good way to build wealth. And finally, remember that taking care of your finances has to do to the final objective is to be financially secure, to be happy. I always ask at the first day of the course what the student think the course is about. And most of the students think the course is about investing. No, the course is a happiness project.
That makes sense, yeah. And would you say that all of this also applies to the younger people as well? So do you have any specific suggestions for young people, or would you say to carry the same methodology for the younger people as well?
All of these principles are also valid and important for the young people. And in fact, these are principles that are valid for everyone. But for the young people in particular, I have these suggestions. All of the young people, every young person is endowed with a great asset. They are all rich about time. Mm-hmm. And time, use the time in your favor, right? If you start saving early, it's going to be so much easier to accumulate wealth. The power of interest compounding works in your favor. So, I think that's the greatest resource that people can use. We all live in an ecosystem that, in a sense, influence our choices. But, we need to have the skills and the ability to navigate that system and take advantage of the opportunities offered by the system. And the young have a great opportunity to do so because they have time on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, compound interest, as you know, is very powerful. So even if you have just an extra few years, it can make a massive difference on your wealth for retirement. So absolutely taking advantage of the extra time you have and educating yourself and taking that action is super important. And then now I think we had some questions here. So let me see. I think Sully, we had a question.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suli. Doctor, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all of this. As you were speaking, I was just thinking about the transition from being self-employed, from working for someone else to now being self-employed, and how that's changed my behavior as a consumer and just with my finances. So I wanted to know if you had any specific advice that may be different, that may look different from like self-employed to working for someone else, because sometimes, the way that we get income and spend it looks different.
Yes, I have several recommendations. One is that my recommendation for a self-employed person is that, your buffer stock of precautionary savings, I think, should be higher, right? Because you have less of a stability of income. And so, it's important for you to have the capacity to rely on a higher amount of saving and to buffer, the ups and downs in a sense of your own, working and a new job and so on. The other thing is, I think it's important to try to distinguish what is your, in a sense, budget for your, company, for your self-employment versus your own finances. Sometimes the two becomes very mixed up, and you sometimes want to make that distinction also because, do you want to put all of your money, for example, into your, activity, be mindful about what is it that which type of risk do you want to take and how much do you want to put into, for example, the capital in your activity, which I'm sure is probably going to bring a higher return, right? Versus, for example, your own financial security, your retirement, your future, and so on. And, as as for the employer, there are tax advantage assets also for the self-employed. So make sure that you take advantage of those tax favors asset as well. You know, you have to provide yourself for your future, right? There is no 401k or no employer match for you. And so take good care of yourself, your financial security, and your future.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, and we're gonna have all the slide deck available after, so we'll have a lot of resources and talking about as well as like in the resource hub of the AIC website, just that has access to all this information, like the 401k, IRA, and all that stuff, which is super important for for self-employed people, and just understanding all that so you can maximize your tax benefits as well as plan for retirement properly. So this is all great stuff. So does anybody else have any more questions? In the meantime, as you guys are thinking of questions, Dr. Lusardi, did you have any questions for us for the rest of the day?
Yes, I do have a lot of questions for all of you. And I'm going to start with you, Milan, because you are also passionate about financial literacy. And, we need a lot of resources, to navigate our personal financial life. So which resources would you recommend?
Yeah, so I think initially, like earlier we were talking about younger people, right? So again, for younger people, it's all going to come down to education, right? So I think just educating yourself through common personal finance books, which we're going to be going into later, just getting started with some books, because these are not going to be the typical books and textbooks that we are reading in school. These are going to be like nonfiction books that won't be, as boring, because people have this, like, there's just this connotation with textbooks and books as being boring from school. I'm not saying all textbooks are like that, but, I remember reading just like science books and stuff, and some of them could just get too much, but just getting these nonfiction personal finance books are amazing. Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one, it's a good book to start off with. There's also just like the common little sense of investing, I think, that talks about investing in the S&P 500 index fund, not trying to beat the market rates. So just these books, as well as watching YouTube channels like Graham Stephan, right, Humphrey Yang, these are all going to be great resources to kind of start off with. And again, you don't want to just go blindfolded into investing in stocks when you don't understand what is really happening. So reading some of these books, The Psychology of Money will teach you to be rich, understanding the psychology behind why people spend and how you can practice self-discipline and all that stuff. It's amazing, right? So I think just these books, YouTube channels, there's also amazing podcasts out there nowadays. A quick Google search, you can find some of the best ones, some of the top people in there. And obviously you don't want to be listening to anybody and everybody. So definitely there's a little judgment call there. Do your research on the people you're listening to, on the books that you're reading. But for the most part, all these people that are going to be in the slides are talking about, amazing stuff that people can do with their finances and stay on track with it. So I highly recommend checking some of these people out if you're just starting out, because YouTube is a great resource. These books are great to start off with. Then you can even move into podcasts. A lot of stuff out there nowadays.
Thank you. And I have actually a question for Brianna, because I have mentioned a lot, for example, the gender difference in financial literacy. We found this in every data set, not just in the US, but around the world. So there is a very strong gender difference in financial literacy. And why do you think it is important? And perhaps what can we do to fill and bridge that gap?
I think in general, women, I think due to culture, I think in most cultures, men are taught to be the ones to be the breadwinners, the ones to take care of finances. And so I think that as time is progressing, I've seen more and more women becoming more comfortable with having like their own independence and having some say in the finances now. So I think we're already slowly moving that way and in that direction. But I think what helps is having more people openly talk about it. The more people that openly talk about it, the more people that comfortable. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to think of how many, I know at least like 20 people I can name off the top of my head that are men in finance who have over like 1 million followers. But I can only name like 1 or 2 other females that have like over 1 million like following in finance. And so I think as that grows and grows, there's going to be more reach.
I want to follow up on that. Follow us, right? As well. Follow Brianna, follow Kiana, follow all of these incredible women here. Finance does belong to women as well. And I have a quick question related to the topic that we have been discussing. One is for Andrew about the importance of the family background, right? Like talking about money, and not everybody has the opportunity to talk about money. And Nick as well, I'd like to talk to you about, like the statistics are so daunting. People get an F in personal finance, and they've been getting an F for 7 years of, for 6 years, the data, we have been starting collecting the data in 2016, but it's not improving. So, what do you think we can do to address that? And, what does it mean to be financially capable as a career creator?
Definitely. So I feel in terms of having these conversations at home, they should start young and it should be a common occurrence. I think the most important thing is to understand debt and paying credit card bills on time. So if you have young children or you have young siblings, you can help instill these things at them at a younger age, just paying off things in full and on time and not racking up expenses that you can't pay off in the next 30 days. Because all this will do is add on a lot of fees and interest, and that will end up making what you bought a lot more than it actually was. And now you're going to be spending current dollars and future dollars to pay off for past mistakes. So I think it's very important to have these conversations at a young age. And if you don't have kids, you perhaps have younger cousins or younger siblings, and you teach something to somebody and they'll teach it to somebody else. And that's the beauty of personal finance conversations. It spreads like wildfire.
100%. And as far as actually like what it means to be financially capable as a content creator, I think that's just being like comfortable and confident with your money, essentially. Even though we have kind of irregular incomes, especially compared to people who work normal jobs, if you know exactly what to do with each dollar of income that you bring in, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable, and you're going to be able to set yourself up for a potentially lifetime or at least a short-term little window of financial security. And that's going to allow you to focus more on your business, focus more on your friends, focus more on your family instead of spending however many hours per week worrying about your personal finances.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think with the irregular income, it can be, if you're not managing it right, this is why there's so many creators that go in debt or that go broke. Literally, I've seen videos of it. And initially they're getting so much money, but then they spend it all, and they have, they're not expecting that the income is going to go down next year. Maybe something isn't working. You have to adapt on social media. Things are changing all the time. And guess what? Some of these creators are ending up with, not in the financial situation they want to be because they aren't really aware of all this. Cool. So does anybody else have any more questions? I think there was a comment, I think Soli is reading The Psychology of Money. That is awesome. There's some great books.
So I'm currently reading the book. I have it with me. I love the book. So this was very timely, but I was looking at the slides as you were sharing and thinking about what I was reading. And I know you shared that financially, we as a people haven't been doing well with financial literacy for years, and there hasn't been much of a change. And even in the book, they talk about how, like, when you come from different families, your behaviors are passed down through generations. So like a family who's experienced a war behaves with money very differently than a family who's experienced a lot of inflation. So it's like, what is and I don't know if there's an actual answer to this, but what is the actual step, or what's the closing gap between like having all the resources and knowing what to do, right? Like, we know, pay your bills on time, make sure that you don't get too in debt, and actually following through with that, because a lot of us have the resources, we have the education, but it's something within the behavior that just doesn't allow us to get to financial wealth or financial success.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have, a growth mind. And in that respect, it takes an effort to go from knowledge to behavior. And so, we have to remind people that, this is important, and also that there are rewards. And it's very important to have this a growth mindset of, looking to the future, of, growing your wealth, growing your, unlocking opportunities, so using that knowledge as indeed power to do better. And I, for example, think that women, for example, often lack the confidence to do so. And so in my class, I make special effort to not only, in a sense, teach, but also nudge women and have them maybe, operate in a group with friends and so on. So in order to achieve that knowledge and give the confidence of people to do better. I also want to say it's, in my view, incredibly important that we teach this topic in school. Starting as early as possible, actually, not just high school, but earlier on, so that everybody has access to that knowledge, and so that we create that culture of talking about money that Milan was talking about, right? Often we don't talk about this, and we think money creates a lot of anxiety because, so often we don't have the resources to do so. But it is also possible. Also, I wanted to say many people are able to save in very, very poor countries. So often it is our wish and capacity and will to save, not necessarily the lack of resources to do so. And I think the school is an important and equalizing way to provide that access, to provide that key that open the door to opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That, and just to like add on, I feel like the sooner you get the knowledge, the better, because then you can start executing. I mean, it's just going to be up to the person. Do you want to take action on what you know? Because everybody knows, like everybody knows what it needs to be done. I guess when it comes to, like, say, your health, it's you have to work out and eat right. It really is that simple when it comes to it. But I think people don't take the action because sometimes people don't have the self-discipline to do it. And it takes time to build these habits when it comes to spending. Like, you need to be consistently, when you spend, you need to build these habits of not spending more than you earn, not spending more than you can pay off easily, not maxing out your credit card. And I think it just takes time. So as soon as you learn, I think over time these habits build, and also surrounding yourself with the right resource or the right people, right? When you consistently see videos of somebody telling you, do not max out your credit card, do not max out your credit card, you're going to be a lot more likely to do it. So also just like being in that zone of just always reading these finance books, like The Psychology of Money or I'll Teach You to Be Rich, and just consistently being around this stuff, I think also just reinforces you to do that stuff. And then it'll slowly build that discipline. But it definitely takes a lot of time because I know it can be hard sometimes to kind of control the spending and do all that stuff. So thank you so much, Dr. Lusardi, for joining the AIC today and sharing your expert opinion. I think we have probably gone past your time, but before you go, can you please tell the viewer how they can connect with you on social media and just to like see all your stuff to learn more?
Absolutely. So I'm active on all of the social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm not on TikTok, Milan. I'm too old for that. And also consult our webpage at GFLEC, the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, which is www.gflec.org, where we provide a lot of resources, information about me, way to access me, and also follow us on social media. We describe a lot of the result of our research, which we hope provide data, evidence, and encouragement to everybody to do well on their finances.
Yeah, definitely. And TikTok is, I recommend trying it out. It's definitely getting bigger. So a lot of new people on there. And sorry, by the way, I didn't see this, but we did have one question.
At Lopani Tani. But I had a question on getting started with I was not brought up with financial literacy, or just where to even start with that, because it can feel very overwhelming. If I should reach out for help or hire someone, or just any kind of advice for that.
I have a couple of advice for that, which is, you can start as simple and start, very slow. It takes a little bit of time, to build this, and also to build interest. I really want this to not to be a task or a chore, but to be something that you enjoy doing. And I really think it starts with getting yourself informed. I do believe that it's important, for people also to hire financial advisor. It's not that you have to be, financially a financial expert yourself, but it takes a little bit of knowledge to also choose a financial advisor. I think financial literacy and financial advice are not substitute, they are complement. And I can tell you a lot of stories of people who lost wealth because they didn't choose the right financial advisor. And so, build that basic knowledge that also allows you to be comfortable in, looking for advice and follow the advice, in particular on issues that can be more complex and complicated, dealing with taxes, dealing with investment, or dealing with things that you are not comfortable about. And I think follow this group as well of influencer, and Milan has all of these videos and so on, and on TikTok, to hopefully making this topic enjoyable and simple as possible. I think these are basic principles that will really help you unlock the opportunity and improve your opportunity to do well in your personal finances.
Again, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lusardi. I think we're a little over time on this, and we're going to be going over a little bit more in depth about all those with these questions that were just asked. And but yeah, thank you so much. Go follow Dr. Lusardi to learn more about her work, and she posts a lot of good stuff.
Thank you.
All right, so for this next session, we're gonna be doing a conversation here with Andrew Lokenauth. It's just a fireside chat. You know him as fluent in finance. He graduated with a degree in accounting and finance from Pace University and started his career at Goldman Sachs. So a lot of awesome stuff. Andrew, I'm so glad you could be here for the summit. Please just introduce yourself, give a little bit of background.
No, thank you for having me. My name is Andrew. I run the Fluent in Finance social media pages. I have a degree in finance. A lot of my career have been in this field. I just started these pages as a hobby. I enjoy talking about this stuff, especially during the pandemic. A lot of friends and family started asking me the same questions, and it got pretty repetitive. So I started a Facebook group and a Reddit community to just address these things, and it took off from there. I think understanding money can have a large impact on anyone's ability to provide for their future, and schools don't teach it. So I just wanted to help everyone make better decisions with their money and plan for their future. But that's a little about me.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I feel like a lot of us in the space kind of just started because we enjoyed talking about it, and it just turned into something big. Like for me and like some of the other creators too, I didn't plan to be doing this a lot. It was just, I was learning for finance. I studied finance, did it for years, and then just ended up kind of like doing it how like you're doing it. So that's also good to hear that other creators have similar experiences. So getting right into it, what are some of your proven strategies to help reorganize your lifestyle to improve your finances, right? So if I just got paid $15,000 this month, how can I plan to have enough for the next month or 2 months when my income could potentially be zero as a creator? And I know a lot of creators face this because the income is so irregular. So what are your thoughts on that, and what would you suggest?
Definitely. I mean, this tweet touches on it. You have to make great decisions today so your future is in the right place. I think the two most important things are establishing an emergency fund, but also creating a budget, or if you don't want to create a budget, maybe think about one. It's very important to track your spending in order to figure out where your money is going, and you'll be able to better allocate it. It's very important to have an idea on how much you're spending on what you actually need and what are just wants or variable expenses such as entertainment or eating out. I think once you know the difference between needs and wants, you'll be able to make better decisions. And when I say needs, I mean necessities such as food, shelter, utilities, basic clothing, healthcare, transportation. And when I say wants, it's things that we don't need to survive, right? So entertainment, vacations, dining out, the newest tech and electronics, new clothes, designer clothes, luxury car payments, multiple streaming services. So I think just take a look at that. And if you have a regular income, you should 110% think about having a budget and starting an emergency fund.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think that, yeah, that totally makes sense. Because if you don't get the income next month, then you have an emergency fund to fall back on just in case. That's why I think a lot of us, most players recommend 3 to 6 month emergency fund, so that you can get through that rainy day. And then just knowing your needs and wants, like Andrew was saying, like if you know these are going to be your set expenses that you need, right? Like your I guess your car payment or for your food. Like these are some of the needs and necessities that you absolutely need money for. And other than like, you don't need to buy new clothes every month. So that is kind of like a want, and just preparing for that and having the money for those needs for the next few months, maybe, right? So I think Andrew touched on some amazing points. And so one thing that the creators have down, I think, is making money, right? So the making money part, creators have it down, but how should somebody with an irregular income manage it better? What do you think?
Definitely, and I can dig on the two things I mentioned before. So making money and managing money are two important skills. They're different, so you should be aware of it. So I guess to touch on creating a budget, you should at least think about a budget, which would include all your basic expenses. And don't think of a budget as something restrictive. A budget is basically a plan that can help reduce unnecessary spending. And you're going to prioritize where you want to actually put your money. And if you have times where you spend more than you make, you can adjust your budget by cutting unnecessary expenses or earning more if you can. So I think for fixed expenses and fixed income that is going to be the same every month, you just list it out. And when you have variable expenses or income, you can pull your bank statements, credit card statements, and just take the average of the last 6 to 12 months, because you're estimating and making a projection. So I think that those are two things you can do. And if you can, try to reduce the gap between your expenses and your actual income. So one thing a lot of people do, they might eat out less often. They might shop for a cheaper phone plan, cheaper renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, car insurance. So if you can try to increase income and reduce expenses, you'll be in a good spot. And also digging on the emergency fund, it's very important if you have a regular income, because it'll help you get through unexpected scenarios, right? Like a layoff, if you have a slowdown in money a month, if you have an unexpected car repair or home repair, that's what that fund is for. And it'll help you because you won't have to charge the expenses on your credit card and borrow the money at a high interest rate, because you will have this ahead of time. So I think it's very important to figure out how much money you'll need to cover living expenses, anywhere from 3 to 6 months, just so you don't end up in this debt trap.
Okay, that makes sense. And just to kind of reiterate, like what are some more examples? What are some examples of the needs? And then what are some examples of wants?
Definitely. So needs are things that you need to survive, right? So your housing, it might be a mortgage, it might be a rent. That should be a cornerstone of your budget that 100% has to get paid. You have your groceries, right? Maybe wants or chips or unhealthy snacks. So you figure out what you actually need to survive or what you need to make money. So I guess if you're a creator, some things you need to make money might be a laptop, right? You don't need the best laptop, a $5,000 laptop. You can get a $1,000 laptop. So I like to think of needs are things that is an asset because you can use it to make more money, and wants are things that you may not need. So I know a lot of people who they don't have the latest iPhone, right? The 14, because every year you're spending $1,000 on a new iPhone. I know a lot of people with a previous one. I myself still have the XR. I might upgrade the next one, but just know what you actually need and what is not going to kill you, and you can save.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of people do forget kind of the difference between those needs and wants and end up spending a lot on wants. And then later on, Nick is actually going to be talking about a good budgeting rule, which is going to be a very good general one that everybody can kind of go off of. So moving on to the next question. When it comes to financial management with an irregular income, how can creator small businesses avoid bad financial decisions?
So I think 3 things are important. And one we touched on, a very bad decision is not having an emergency fund. I think the second one is, if you can, avoid high interest credit card debt, which we also call consumer debt. And this just comes from not paying off credit cards and carrying balances. So a great rule of thumb is when you charge something, don't buy it if you can't pay it off in the next 30 to 60 days, only because the fees that you incur from interest and charges will make the product more than it actually is. all debt does, it's going to hurt your ability to invest in your future. Debt robs you of your future because you're using the money you earn today to pay off things from your past. So I'm a big believer that credit cards should be paid in full each month so you avoid the interest and fees that come with it, because it'll just end up costing a lot more than your original purchase price. I think that and emergency fund are very important tenements to have for anybody.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I think the high interest credit cards can definitely get out of hand because the average interest on a credit card is going to be 20% APY. That is so high, right? Like every year you're paying 20% interest like that. It's so high, and people sometimes don't realize how much they paid in interest because all you're doing is you're making the minimum payments, and you shouldn't be making the minimum payments. You should try to pay off as much as possible when it comes to credit cards. But yeah, that's just amazing advice right there. So yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Your tweets are so insightful. Really appreciate you sharing all your stuff. So how can everybody engage with you and find you and follow your stuff?
Definitely. Thank you for having me. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I post daily tweets. The best ones I post on Instagram. It's the same handle on everything. It's Fluent in Finance. Or if you go to andrewlokenauth.com, I have a landing page with all of my links. So if you have any questions, let me know. I also started a Reddit community. So if I can't get to your question, someone else will. Community has like 55,000 people now, which is very helpful, and a Facebook group. So it's a pretty cool community. There's people helping each other.
Yeah, that is awesome. I Reddit. I don't know any other financial creator with a Reddit community, you guys. So this is actually super cool. You guys can really interact one-on-one. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. So now we will be moving on to Nick. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Nick Talks Money. His page is all over the place. He's almost 1 million followers on TikTok, and he's been on NBC, Evening News, Bloomberg, and featured in publications like CBS and Yahoo Finance. So if you're not following him, you should. Post a lot of good stuff. Thanks so much for being part of the summit, Nick.
Yes, sir. Of course. Glad to be here, and can't wait to talk some money.
Yeah, of course, man. So as a certified financial planner certificate, you've probably worked with a lot of different people like career creators and digital small businesses with irregular incomes. When it comes to financial planning and retirement, how do you propose getting on track if you're struggling to pay bills each month?
Yeah, if you're struggling to handle monthly bills, you probably have one of three problems. I mean, one, there's a spending problem, might have an earning problem, or you might have a savings problem. Now, to tackle a spending problem, it might not sound super fun right away, but I mean, it is the most effective way to fix it, at least in my experience, is to just block out like 30 minutes to an hour and just go through your last like 3 months of credit card and bank statements. I guarantee you'll be surprised at how much you spend in a certain category. Like maybe you spent like $500 on eating out in a month. You're like, oh shoot, like that's half a rent. And you might want to like dial that back just a little bit moving forward. And it'll just make you a lot more mindful with your spending habits, just moving forward into the future. And then once you have a kind of a good handle on your spending and where like all of your money is going each month, Milan kind of foreshadowed this earlier about a simple budgeting rule that is really popular for financial advisors to talk about, and that is the 50-30-20 rule. And that means basically no more than 50% of your income should go towards necessary expenses, 30% towards wants, and 20% saved or invested. So I mean, I think Andrew kind of went over this too, so we don't have to dive super deep into that. But as long as you have some sort of like budgeting framework like that, you should be well on your way to curbing your spending problem. Now, if you have an earning problem, you just basically need to make more money. No, just kidding. But in reality, like we were talking about earlier, you should really be open about talking about money with like fellow creators. If you're a creator, you probably know at least one or two other creators. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a whole friend group of creators. Like I know Milan, a lot of those personal finance creators are really, really tight knit, and we openly discuss the kind of deals that we're getting and kind of discussing these deals, these brand deals you're getting, whether they're affiliate deals, like flat fee deals, just any way that a brand is paying you with other creators. Make sure that it's basically you're getting paid a fair amount for the work that you're doing based off of your following, based off your engagement, etc. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I figured out I was undercharging on different brand deals just because I talked to other creators around my same size, maybe a little bit bigger or smaller than me, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm charging like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 more for the same exact deliverable. Like, oh yeah, I should go like ask for some more money here. And let's see, what's our last one? Savings problem. So savings problem goes hand in hand with a budgeting problem. But for savings, you should really focus on paying yourself first. So basically, every time you get paid, you should sock away at least 20% of that amount in emergency fund, going back to 50-30-20 rule, or in your investment account. And speaking of emergency funds, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier as well. I was taught as a financial planner, the average person should have like 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in something like a high yield savings account to kind of act as a rainy day fund in case they lost their job and they needed a couple months of basically runway to cover their rent and essential expenses while they kind of get back on their feet. Now, as self-employed people with pretty irregular incomes, creators should probably double this and have at least like 6 to 12 months worth of expenses saved in their emergency fund. Because I mean, we've all ridden the roller coaster of algorithms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And we know 1 week your content's getting pushed out to everyone, brands are in your inbox trying to give you deals. The next week it's completely dry. You're getting like no views on each of your videos. So it's great to have a longer runway just in case one of these dry spells does last a protracted period of time. And yeah, hopefully that was enough to answer the question.
Yeah, dude, that was amazing. That was a lot of value add. So, and I think for all the creators, like everybody should be connecting with creators in the same niche. Like that's how you find out what the market rates are for brands, for whatever it might be. And that way you guys can all kind of even set the market rates. Because even for me personally, like I was only charging a few thousand a post initially in my, like early on in my creator journey. But then I realized I could have been charging like 10,000, right? Like it's insane. Once you connect and network, your income will literally like 2, 3, 4x, right? Just because you will learn so much more. So make sure you're always connecting with the creators in the same niche. And then Nick touched on like so many good points there. The budgeting rule, like budgeting doesn't have to be complicated. Like people think budgeting is going to be this Excel spreadsheet and you write down all this stuff. Yes, you can do that. But it can also be very general, 50% towards your wants, right? 30% towards your needs. You're making 5,000 a month. You're going to put 2,500 towards your needs, 30% towards your wants, and then 20% towards your emergency fund or investing. So you can also just generalize it that way, something to keep you on track. It doesn't have to be so complicated, right? And a lot of people get that wrong by thinking it's going to be complicated, so they never do it. So now moving on to the next question, what do you think are the most significant financial risks in retirement, Nick?
Well, it's not saving enough money. No, I mean, a lot of people think they're going to retire and they're and basically all their expenses are going to go down. They're saying like, oh yeah, I'm not going to drive as much, not going to spend as much money going out, doing all this kind of stuff. But there's a lot of expenses in retirement that increase significantly, especially depending on like the age you retire. Like if you fall in the normal retirement age range of like 60 plus, one thing that is a humongous expense is healthcare. I mean, I just looked up the stat before this call, and apparently the average retired couple spends over $300,000 on healthcare alone just throughout their entire retirement. And that doesn't even include the costs. Is if you get to a point where you need to live in an assisted living facility, the median rents for those are like $4,500 per month. If unfortunately you get to the point where you have to live in a nursing home, the median cost of those are $9,000 per month. So you want to make sure you save up, you budget plenty of money for healthcare expenses as you get older and your body kind of starts letting you down. And then there's the more fun part, which is the travel component. I mean, the average retiree spends over $11,000 per year on travel. Now that they basically have all the free time in the world that's not occupied by their working hours. So, I mean, it's great to basically just know what your retirement number is. And then we're gonna touch on this next and really shoot for that and maybe kind of over budget. I mean, it's never a bad idea to save more money for retirement. I mean, it's the most obvious thing in the world, but save as much as you can.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess just not having enough money is the biggest risk. Not having enough money for healthcare or for just, I guess, whatever you want to do for retirement. So I think it just comes down to knowing about like understanding your lifestyle, right? Like how much are you going to spend for retirement every year? Are you going to be taking a lot of vacations? Then you should probably save a little bit more, right? But yeah, so moving on average, Americans have around $141,000 saved up for retirement, according to How America Saves 2022 report compiled by Vanguard, which is an investment firm that represents more than 30 million investors, as per CNBC. Okay, so finding a financial advisor can help you create a financial strategy that meets your retirement goals. So how do you begin calculating how much you need to invest and save to retire?
Yeah, so I always like to reference this little thing called the Trinity study. So back in 1998, 3 college professors came together at a place called Trinity University to answer basically this question of, oh, how much should the average person aim to shoot for retirement savings before they pull the plug and stop work? And they came up with basically what's now known as the 4% rule. So the 4% rule states that if your expected annual expenses are 4% or less of your investment balance, don't worry about going through an example, it's kind of a high level concept. But if your expenses are 4% or less of your investment balance, which basically just means your amount you have invested in the stock market, essentially, you should be able to retire and basically never have to worry about money again ever in your life. So here's the example. If you had $1 million investment balance and you think you'd spend $40,000 or less per year, you should be able to retire with about a 90% chance of not running out of money over a period of 60 years. Or if you have a more like traditional retirement time horizon of 30 years, there's a 96% chance that you won't ever run out of money. And actually what the study showed is that most of the time people like died or reached the end of their life with more money invested than they started with.
Wow.
And if these odds aren't good enough for you, if 90+% odds aren't good enough for you, if you increase or if you lower your spending to 3% of your investment balance, your odds of success are basically 100%. Like basically, if you spend 3% or less of your investment balance, you are never going to run out of money, which is awesome, which is super cool. So it gives you like a concrete number to work towards. And then in reality, this study is actually, it's very, very, very conservative because in the reality, like most of us are hustlers, we'll never stop earning income from side hustles, our businesses, or other investments that we make. And this study makes a huge assumption that your investment portfolio will literally be your only source of income throughout retirement. So in reality, like I think 4% is a really safe number to shoot for. But again, if you're super not risk tolerant, the opposite of risk tolerant, then 3% is a good number to shoot for. And if you guys are wondering why 4%, like why does this rule work? Like what are the mechanics behind this? Well, during like an average year in the stock market increases in value by about 10%. So if your investments increase in value by 10% and you're only withdrawing 4% of your total investment value, that leaves you with a net gain of 6% on the year. So if that was $1 million, you would still be left over with an excess gain of like $60,000 during an average year. So theoretically, as long as these averages keep going up, you should never have to touch your principal or the amount of money that you originally had invested for retirement while you're in retirement. You should just keep living off of the interest. Now, if you want to find what your own retirement number is using the 4% rule, you could just like get out your calculator and start typing in a bunch of big numbers and multiply them by 4%. Or you could take your expected annual expenses in retirement. So let's say you wanted to spend like $50,000 per year, divide that by 0.04 or 4%, and that will give you your retirement number. So if you do 50,000 divided by 0.04, that gets you to 1.25 million. So that's a number that it'll give you like a concrete goal to shoot for. And earlier we talked about like, hey, like we have all the knowledge that we need in order to make the right financial decisions, but like what would actually motivate us to get there? Having a concrete number in mind where you say like, hey, if I reach $1.25 billion invested, if I reach that amount of money, then I will be able to retire or at least become financially independent and never have to worry about work again. That will motivate you a lot more to start saving away money. I know that's how I started right after I graduated college. I calculated my like retirement number. I was like, oh, like I have to save X amount of dollars for X years. And if the stock market like maintains this average annual return, like I should be able to be financially independent by like this age. So that really motivated me to save more than like 50% of each of my paychecks and just kind of keep chiseling away towards financial independence.
Yeah, that is such amazing stuff. I have constantly heard about the 4% rule, and that's just such an actionable tip, like for everybody. Like, okay, if I'm going to be spending 50,000 a year in retirement, just divide that by 0.04, shoot for 1.25 million. Like that's just a solid concrete number that you can work towards, and you're most likely going to end up having a lot, right? Because you're just and the concept works. It just logically works. You're living off the interest that you're earning from the markets. Okay, so just simply learning how to invest and consistently invest can just come in clutch for retirement. Are there any specific retirement accounts that you suggest for creators?
Yeah, so there are 4 that may or may not be available to you depending on how your kind of creator business is structured. We'll start off if you're a sole proprietor, so that means that you haven't like officially registered as a business, you don't have an LLC, you don't have a corporation or anything, you just make content, get paid directly to your own bank accounts, etc. Then the only retirement accounts you probably have access to are called Roth and traditional IRAs. And they're both very, very similar accounts. They're essentially the same thing, but they just have different tax benefits associated with them. So we'll start with the kind of similarities. You can contribute up to $6,000 per year total between both of them. So this means you can either put $6,000 into one and zero into the other, $3,000 into each, et cetera. You can mix and match however you want, but $6,000 is the total you can put between the two. And then the important thing is, a lot of people don't realize this when they're first opening these accounts, is you contribute money into there, but you actually have to invest this money. It's not like automatically invested for you. Like if you work a normal job and you invest in a 401k, that money is automatically invested for you. When you invest in an IRA, IRA stands for individual retirement account. So you as the individual are responsible for managing that account. So you actually have to go in there and invest this money. And then another similarity, when you can withdraw this money basically penalty free once you reach age 59 and a half. It's kind of a weird number that the IRS actually recently just decreased. So we'll see what they decide to do in the future. But as of right now, when you reach 59 and a half, you can take out this money and use it to do whatever you want, basically. Now, the difference, again, comes down to their tax benefits. So the Roth IRA, so let's say you contribute $6,000 to a Roth IRA, you get no tax benefit today. Like you literally wouldn't notice like any difference. You wouldn't see any savings, et cetera. But these funds, once they're inside your account, when they're invested in your account, they grow tax-free. And then when you reach age 59 and a half or at any point after when you want to take this money out, you can withdraw your earnings completely tax-free. So if you had $1 million in your Roth IRA, that's $1 million of post-tax money, which is absolutely huge because the government isn't exactly known for decreasing taxes once they are increased. So we have no idea what the tax rate's going to be in 20, 30, 40 years whenever we eventually do retire or reach age 59. Now, the traditional IRA is a little bit different because if you contribute like $6,000 to one of those, your taxable income on your 2022 income tax return, or assuming that you contribute that $6,000 this year, would actually decrease by that $6,000. So if you made like, let's say you bring in $80,000 gross on your tax return, if you contribute to a traditional IRA, if you contribute $6,000 to that traditional IRA, you'd only be taxed on $72,000 worth of that. So whether your tax rate, your average tax rate is probably around like 20 to 30%, depending on what state you live in. So that would be, your tax savings would be 20 to 30% of $6,000. So it's immediate tax savings today. But the downside to traditional IRAs is, still the funds inside the account do grow tax-free. But when you reach age 59 and a half and you want to take these funds out, they do get taxed at ordinary income tax rates, which they top out at 37% for federal. And if you live somewhere like California, it could be like 13%. So you could be getting like basically half of this money taken away from taxes by the time you retire, depending on what your income bracket is. And Roth IRAs have many other benefits we're not going to go into, but basically they allow you to be a lot more flexible with your money. So that's why a lot of financial advisors, a lot of finance gurus that you see on TikTok, like basically everyone here, a lot of us do preach the praises or sing the praises of Roth IRAs because they're so flexible and they have great tax benefits. Now, if you do have an LLC or a corporation, you do have access to two other retirement accounts on top of Roth and traditional IRAs. You can still do those, but you also get access to what are called SEP or SEP IRAs and solo 401ks. Now, this is kind of a topic you should go talk to an actual tax advisor about. You basically just set up one meeting with them, costs you $100, $200, and they'll talk you through exactly what is best for your current situation. But SEPs and solo 401ks are super powerful because remember how the contribution limit for a year for a traditional and Roth IRAs, it's $6,000. For SEPs and 401ks, that's $61,000. So you can contribute a lot more to your retirement through these special business-only retirement accounts. And they have essentially the same tax benefits. Traditional IRAs, you save tax money today, and then you pay when you eventually do withdraw these funds in retirement.
Okay, yeah, that was. It's a lot of different accounts, and I remember when I was initially learning about it myself, I had to watch some YouTube videos. So literally, if you guys want to look into each of these accounts, you can also just go on YouTube and type in Roth IRA or something, right? But for most people, Roth IRA is a great option, right? Like as Nick was saying, traditional IRA, I think I've heard that if your income is going to be, I think that depending on your tax bracket of when you're going to retire, if you can predict that, then try the traditional IRA, but that depends on your income levels. So for most people, Roth IRA just works. And you don't right away, as Nick was saying, you don't get those tax benefits right away with the $6,000 that you can maximum that you can deposit. But when you take out that money in retirement, you're getting potentially hundreds of thousands tax-free, okay, which is an insane amount of money if you're consistently investing and you start early. So yeah, Roth IRA is great. And then through the business, SEP IRA, 401ks and all that stuff. Like there's a lot more that gets into it, but that's something that you should probably talk about with an advisor, because it can get really complicated to see how your numbers specifically will work out for you. And then are there any like general, so now I know you were saying that like, okay, I open a Roth IRA, I put money in it, like I can't just let the money sit, I have to actually invest the money, because if I just let it sit, it's basically just like a savings account or something, right? So what are some, I guess, common securities that creators invest in, some common stocks that creators can invest in?
Of course, not financial advice. I mean, obviously, do your own research. Investing comes with risk, all that fun stuff. Don't sue me. But basically, what I have seen as someone who worked in the field of financial advisory for 4 years before I took this whole social media thing full time, is that picking individual stocks is basically a loser's game. You don't know how Walmart, Apple, Tesla, any other, like, let alone big companies, you don't know what small companies are going to perform like in the upcoming 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So what basically I like to do, what a lot of other of my peers in this kind of financial community like to do, is invest into big basket of stocks. And you do this by investing in things called index funds. So index funds, they allow you to invest into, like, you put $1 into an index fund that tracks something like the S&P 500, which basically just means like 500 of the largest companies in the United States. You put $1 into that dollar is invested into all of those companies. So like Apple, Tesla, Walmart, Target, basically any big brand name company you can think of, your money is spread out among 500 of them. So if one company doesn't do well, like let's say Tesla doesn't ship any cars this next quarter, their stock goes down by 50%. It doesn't really affect you because you have 499 other companies in your investment portfolio that are making you money. And you might think these kind of investments come with a lot of fees. They don't. I mean, most of the index funds that you look at, they're, at least for the S&P 500. And then if you want to get even bigger than that, by investing in like a total stock market index, so you own a piece of like literally every single company, the fees are like 0.03% usually per year. So for every $100 you invest, you pay 3 cents just for the convenience of basically being able to invest in all of those companies with a single click of a button. So, I mean, it's even, the studies have shown that professional stock pickers, like the people you see on Wall Street, they can't even consistently beat the returns of a simple index fund like one that tracks the S&P 500 over any significant period of time. And anyone that you've heard about that has done that, it's usually like, it's 1 in a billion. Like they just got super lucky. They made a couple really good investment picks. Like they bought Bitcoin in like 2010. Like, yeah, you're gonna outperform the S&P 500. But usually that's the best way to go for most people.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you guys, even professional analysts that spend their whole careers analyzing stocks, even they can't beat the market return. So why are we going to stress and try to pick out single stocks if we can simply just invest in the S&P 500 and make a massive amount of money from compound interest? Because it's really, really hard to beat the entire market overall. So I don't see the time. I don't see like reason for wasting your time trying to pick a single company instead of just investing in the top 500, right? Because the risk is a lot lower, the returns, there's a lot more history behind it, and so that's amazing. Nick, do you have anything else for any like final words you want to say to creators, like your top tip, I guess, for starting, if you're if you're new in financial literacy, like you just want to learn, like where would you recommend starting off?
Yeah, I mean, follow everyone in this chat would be a great way to start. I mean, honestly, like financial literacy on the internet wasn't something that was super accessible before probably the early 2010s. Like it's where I first started getting involved with it, where I started reading like different financial blogs basically back in the day, but obviously those weren't something that a lot of people came across on a daily basis. But now like those, and then YouTubers like the ones you mentioned earlier, and then now there's so many creators that are making short form video content on personal finance that tries to make this stuff as easy as possible to understand and like make it fun to learn about, which is something that this finance industry has historically had a problem with in the past. Honestly, just like follow a couple finance creators. You after like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of just seeing their videos consistently in your feed, you're going to start to learn a lot more about finance and going to be a little bit more motivated to kind of make the right financial decisions yourself.
Yeah, guys, Nick has amazing content, so Nick should definitely give him a follow. Nick Talks Money is his account.
Appreciate it.
If you guys don't have any more questions, we can definitely move on to the next speaker, but I think everybody has just kind of been asking them the questions as they come, so that's awesome. But yeah, thank you so much, Nick. Again, really appreciate you answering all these questions. And now we'll be moving on to the topic of how to develop financial literacy. Okay, so I'm going to be talking to Brianna about this. Brianna, you tout yourself as a serial entrepreneur, and you educate a community of over 635,000 followers across TikTok and Instagram. I know your background is in real estate. So how did you first start learning about finances and investing?
Yeah, so I started, my dad's actually an entrepreneur and owns his own masonry company. And so I started through just watching him go from bankruptcy when I was younger to building up a successful business and like continuing to try. And so from that, I started reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. I was doing side hustles, and eventually I met a real estate investor who wanted to hire me on as an agent. And that's where I started learning about real estate.
Wow, yeah. So you have a diverse experience. And I know you've told me about like working with your real estate mentor and stuff, and just learning from him as well. So that's sounds like it was a really important part of your journey. So like moving on, as of 2022, there's only 23 states that require high schools to teach financial literacy. 23 states. So that's like less than half the states. Okay, Florida is going to be the 24th starting in 2023, and then 25 states require a high school economics course according to the Council for Economic Education's 2022 survey of the states. Okay, so a lack of the financial education at an early age has long-term consequences. How do you recommend developing more awareness around your finances and just of finances in general? Because a lot of states don't require financial literacy, right? Like they don't require economics courses, or they don't require just the financial literacy, which is going to have long-term consequences, right? Like Florida is going to be the 24th state now that's going to require a high school economics course. So that means 25 states, they're not even requiring these courses, which means that half of the country is potentially does not know anything at all really about financial education. So, and this has long-term consequences, which is what the data showed as we've been talking about. So what are your recommendations for developing more awareness of finances and learning more about it?
Yeah, I think like the number one first thing that people can do is having a budget and just knowing how much money you have. A lot of people they don't even know how much money they have or don't have. And so I think just actually having a budget is like the first step to everything else, is just learning how much money do I actually have? What do I actually spend? How much money do I need versus how much money do I recurrently spend on things that I don't need? Just getting aware of your own personal finance is going to help you like start educating yourself on other things related to finance.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I think earlier we've talked about a few ways you can start budgeting. There's like easy, simple 50-30-20 rule. Again, it doesn't have to be that complex. But once you become more aware, like Brianna is saying, once you start understanding, okay, this is where my money is going, and you can track your money, then you can really start to get to the bottom of stuff of why you may not have enough money one month and then you have extra the next month, right? So it just that I think that's a great tip from Brianna, where just understanding your bank account, just look at your bank account statement, like where's your money going? Like how, because you're only going to be able to fix any problems with your finances if you understand where your money is going and you track it. I believe, and I have a budget planner, by the way, you can get it on my profile. That can, I guess it's a little bit more complex, but still it's very simple to use, and simple instructions. You literally just put in your expenses, and then it will automatically kind of give you some calculations on how you can budget and you'll just become a lot more aware of your finances if you want to check that out. But 50-30-20 is it's a very good and basic rule. And yeah, and Nick was talking about that earlier. So
yeah, I think too that with the budgeting, like you could just download an app. Like you can download Ally or Mint, or there's so many apps, and you can download, connect all your bank accounts, and then it'll show you right then and there, oh, you spent this much on auto, you spent this much on groceries, you spent this much on shopping, like right then and there. And you didn't even have to do anything. You just put in all your accounts and it'll auto categorize it for you. And so I think that's one of like the newest ways you can do it. I have Mint Premium. I think it's like $5 a month or something, but I get to have all these insights, and it's not like, it's just so much easier. So now, like in this day and age, it should be even easier to budget than like back in the day when you needed to do like a spreadsheet and all that. But when it comes to educating yourself as a finance creator, I think keeping in the know, networking constantly. I go to I go to events almost monthly. I go to real estate, finance, just general investing conferences almost monthly to keep myself educated. I read at least a book a month. I'm constantly watching YouTube, listening to podcasts, that kind of thing, and just staying in the know.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I think that's a lot of good stuff right there. With Mint, I think Mint is a great one. Like, they'll also email you, like when you spend. If you spend over a certain limit, they're going to email you, oh, you spent over this, right? It just makes you a little bit more aware. You start getting these notifications and you're like, oh my God, I'm starting to spend more money. And then every month they're also going to send you these little reports like this says you spent this much on this category, you spent this much on this category, and that way you can really understand, oh my God, I'm spending $500 on food every month. Maybe I need to come down a bit, right? And once you increase that awareness, as Brianna is saying, you can really start working towards that. So do you recommend any books that are like must reads for career creators, Brianna?
Yeah, I think for career creators, I think networking is so huge in the industry. And so I always recommend How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think that's like, I think you need like, apart from just learning about the money stuff, like learning how to network and like make connections is going to be so important. And so I love How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it's such a great book. I think that one has to be read more than once. Literally, you guys, it is one of the best books when it comes to just helping you out in general with persuasion, with meeting new people, networking. Are there any other like finance specific books that you really like, Brianna?
Finance specific, I'm thinking The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, to learn about real estate investing. I like Low and No Money Down Financing. It's about how to get deals with no money or low money. A lot of it is real estate because I'm a real estate person. So I read a lot of real estate books. And so anything from Bigger Pockets or Brandon Turner is really good.
Yeah. I know you also read like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and some of these other classics, right? Which are great to start off with as well. Do you watch any YouTube channels to learn?
I mean, I watch like the main ones, Graham Stephan. I really enjoy Ryan Pineda's content because it's more detailed into real estate.
Yeah.
I really like Bigger Pockets. I think Bigger Pockets is both a podcast and YouTube channel. That's like the number one. They have a lot of real estate investors that come on and they interview them and go through how they started. I know there's one of my friends, Cody, was on there who has 100 units at like 20 years old. And you can watch the podcast episode going through how he got 100 units at 20 years old, like apartment complexes.
That's awesome. Wait, does he go over it all in one episode of how he actually did it?
Yeah, he goes over it all in one episode. It's all interview style.
Oh, okay, that's super dope. And then so Bigger Pockets. Does Bigger Pockets also have a YouTube, or do they only have the podcast and their?
Yeah, they have a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a YouTube channel.
Cool. Are there any other resources that you recommend for creators?
I think I'm on Reddit all the time. Like I'm constantly using Reddit forums. I love Quora. I look at questions on Quora all the time. And just Google. Like anytime I have any thought, I just like Google it. And then you're always going to come up with new like articles. There's blogs. I really like medium.com. I read a lot of the Washington Post. Just stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a quick Google search can give you access to a lot of resources. Like if you have like, for example, like a tax question or something, you can definitely look it up really quick. So you understand the bare minimum and the basics of it. Obviously, like you want to do all that stuff through a CPA, but you still need to have a general understanding of what is happening. Like you need to know what income bracket you're and how much tax you're going to do. So that's like Google is great for all that stuff. But there's also definitely just make sure that like the sites are reputable as well as like these blogs and the creators so that you're not, I guess, being led on or getting wrong information. That's actually going on into the next question. Like, Brianna, how do you determine if these are all reliable sources of information and if it's going to be good advice for you specifically to use?
I think you always need multiple opinions before taking action on something serious. Like I always opt for like, I'm not a DIY person. So I always opt to like when I'm doing something legal, I'm going to talk to a lawyer. If I need something with my taxes, I'm going to talk to a tax person. And I think long run, it's going to be 100% worth it to get a second opinion, a professional opinion to help you do these things. So I think you can get general information, but you should always seek for at least a second or third opinion before taking action on something big, something serious.
Yeah, okay. So basically just look at multiple resources and then see, get different opinions. Because I know like a lot of the time, like us, for most finance creators, we're gonna be like, oh, don't max out your credit card, right? Like that advice is consistent. So if there's something that everybody's consistently saying, then that's how you know it's gonna be reliable information. But if you're getting different opinions, then you may need to get more, because sometimes this just comes down to people's opinions on like how you should handle something and see. And then you have to also analyze your own situation. Like, is it gonna make sense for my money? Or is it going to make sense for my financial situation, right? So
yeah, I want to add a point to that where it comes to like some people opt to like for example with me, like I'm investing in real estate, so I want to keep money available to invest in real estate. And so to me, it doesn't make sense. Like I right now owe about 30K on my vehicle, but it's at a 1.4% interest rate. And so for other people, we'd say like, hey, you should pay that off. You should pay off that 35 grand. But to me, it's like I can make way more money investing like that 35 grand elsewhere. I can make way more than the 1.4% interest. So to me, it doesn't make sense for me to pay that off. But to somebody else who isn't investing or flipping real estate, maybe that would make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, it comes down to how much risk tolerance you have, right? Even for me, like my car payment, like a lot of people say pay all in cash, but you can pay for all in cash. But I think that is only if you don't have the discipline to not invest the rest of the money. Like even for me, like I have my loan is at 2% for my car. Like, why wouldn't I invest? Like, why would I pay it off if I can invest that money and I can keep it invested for a long time and get like a 10% average return on that 30 grand or whatever, right? So sometimes you also have to look at like what you prefer. Some people love being debt free, right? Some people don't want to have any debt. They think debt just gives them stress. While other people, they can handle it. They can be in debt and they can be happy and they can invest in other stuff, right? So also depends on your personal preferences in terms of what you like. And there was a question in the chat. What are some good platforms you've used for receiving payments from brand deals? I think Brianna, you can answer that first, and then I can also add on.
Yeah, so recently I've used Bill.com, which has been really good. Other than that, I've used PayPal. But PayPal has higher fees. I'm testing Bill.com right now and have had a lot of success with that.
Yeah, Bill.com doesn't have any fees. Have they charged any fees? Because with me, they've never charged any fees.
No, they haven't. But I have to wait, I have to wait like longer for the money. Like if you want to get it instantly, then you'll get a fee, of course. But like PayPal has like really high fees.
Yeah, PayPal is like not the, PayPal is
way more convenient. It's convenient though, that's why.
Yeah, the convenience. PayPal definitely has higher fees than some other places. But if you like the convenience, then you can use that. But Bill.com is super good as long as the other company is using Bill.com, and a lot of the times most of these brands are. And also just direct deposit. Like I have gotten direct deposit, and that is 0 fees for me, right? With PayPal, sometimes these brands are the fee is gonna add up to a few $100s or like a lot, and it's gonna come out of your pocket. So if they're gonna pay you from PayPal or something that charges fees, make sure to clarify that like that they cover the fees so that it doesn't come out of your pocket. If you're getting $10,000 and 500 of that goes towards fees, like, that's a substantial amount of money. So you need to make sure that the other brand or whoever you're working with, that's clear to them that they are going to be covering the fees. And then, that's why direct deposit can come in handy, or wire transfers as well. But I think wire transfers have fees as well. But as long as they can cover the fees, then you should be good to go. So that's all you got to clarify with them. And then any platform really works as long as they're covering the fees, whether it's PayPal, but Bill.com, direct deposit, wire transfers for any like international payments work really, really well. So I think it's just good to see what the brand can do and then do the research on there. But yeah, Josh, I think direct deposit is my preferred, and then Bill.com is also really good. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Brianna. How can people connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm Brianna Nava on all platforms, BREYANNANAVA, V as in Victor. But that's it. I'm just Brianna Nava on all Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, everywhere.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely give her a follow. Give everybody a follow, you guys. Andrew, Nick, Brianna, they all create amazing content around finance, and it can really become helpful. Like if you see like even a video a day, right? Like it adds up over time. It's going to add up. Maybe it's like one YouTube video from Brianna a day, and then you see a Twitter post from Andrew a day, and then you see a TikTok from from Nick a day, it's really not that much. It's going to take like maybe 5 minutes of your time, but it really adds up over time, all this knowledge. So thank you guys so much. I hope everybody like found this program educational and informative. I know there was a lot, but slowly just kind of start covering the topics one by one, and over time it's going to add up, and your finances are going to, they're going to really level up. So, and also I want to thank all the speakers for donating their time to this initiative and for joining me to this champion this lifelong learning within the career creator community. National Financial Awareness Day is celebrated on August 14th, and this summit is kind of a kickoff event to encourage creators to be more financially capable. So you guys can visit the AIC Resource Hub for more information. A lot of resources are available. Just I think if you can just spend a little bit of time every day learning, it can make a massive impact. Thank you everybody so much for joining.
Produced by the American Influencer Council, the sole 501c6 not-for-profit trade association in the U.S., created by and for career creators.